All right, without further ado, I'm going to announce our speaker for the night. It's going to be David Kotelevskiy. If we can give him a big round of applause. And as he speaks, let's tune our ears to listen, and please keep the side conversations on a minimum and the games on your phone at a 0. But blessings, David.
Thank you. So, I'll be honest with you guys. I don't have a 45-hour-long sermon for you guys today. Who did that? Shame on you. If I could get this open, give me 1 second. So because it's a little bit of a shorter sermon, all I ask from you guys, if you could genuinely just give me your attention for a couple of minutes, right? I usher every once in a while, and sometimes it almost brings me to shame a little bit to see, half of the youth on their phones, right, during service, and it kind of makes me feel a little bit yucky inside, I guess. But besides the point, the title of my sermon is Give God His Value. Awesome. Give God His value. And I kind of want to just jump right into a story in the Old Testament, in the Exodus, that you guys are probably familiar with. But first, do any of you guys actually know what the word Exodus means? Who said that? So Exodus literally translates to the path out, or the way out, or the exit, right? And so the story I'm going to share with you is about the Israelites' exit out of Egypt, right? And so to kind of just give you a really quick cliff notes, you guys all know the story. Egyptians enslaved the Israelites. Moses abandoned Egypt because he murdered someone out of anger. And he's out in the wilderness, and God gives Moses this idea and this calling. And Moses, initially, he's extremely scared, and he's worried because he's not the best public speaker. He stutters pretty often. He might be a little bit timid. He's not the most bold of guys, but still, he goes out and accepts God's calling for him, goes out to Egypt, frees the Israelites after 10 plagues, and on their way out, you guys all know the story. They come across the Red Sea. Moses splits it, and on his way through, after they all pass, the waters close on the Egyptians. But that's not the main point that I want to talk about. I want to talk about how the Israelites reacted once they were free. Because in the beginning, they were very happy, they were excited, but very quickly that excitement turned into resentment. That excitement, that eagerness to be free, the freedom that they were having turned into anger, and they were thinking, at least we had food in Egypt, at least we knew what tomorrow looked like in Egypt. Who cares if we were slaves? Who cares if they beat us? Because at least we had a place to call home. And so they end up in Mount Sinai, and God calls Moses to the top to give him the 10 Commandments and all of that and the laws. And this is the dialogue that the Israelites have with Aaron as soon as Moses heads up there. So this is Exodus chapter 32, verse 1. When the people see how long it was taking Moses to come back down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron. "Come on," they said, "make us some gods who can lead us. We don't know what happened to this fellow Moses, who brought us here from the land of Egypt." So Aaron said, "Take the gold rings from the ears of your wives and sons and daughters, and bring them to me." All the people took the gold rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron. Then Aaron took the gold, melted it down, and molded it into the shape of a calf. When the people saw it, they exclaimed, "O Israel, these are the gods who brought you out of the land of Egypt." And even I myself, sometimes when I read this story, and I'm sure that this feeling goes for you guys as well, I think, how could they? How could they? They just completely deny the miracles they saw in front of him. They literally saw the plagues over Egypt. They literally saw the angel of death pass over the front of their door. They literally saw Moses part the waters, and still, And still, they deny God and don't give him the value he has deserved. And they deny that their freedom and say, these are the things that we created are the gods that led us out of Israel. And they chose ignorance. Continuing on, the Lord told Moses, quick, go down the mountain. Your people whom you've brought from the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. How quickly they have turned away from the way I commanded them to live. They have melted down gold and made a calf. They have bowed down and sacrificed to it. They are saying, these are our gods, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Now, for the sake of time, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, but just to give you some cliff notes, God is extremely angry, if you guys can't tell, and Moses kind of convinces him, hey, God, they're your people, you love them, right? And so, skipping on a couple verses, after God decides not to destroy all of them, from verse 15, it says, then Moses turned and went down the mountain. He held in his hands the 2 stone tablets inscribed with the terms of the covenant. They were inscribed on both sides, front and back. These tablets were God's work. The words on them were written by God himself. When Joshua heard the boisterous noise of people, that's a big word, the boisterous noise of the people shouting below them, he exclaimed to Moses, it sounds like a war in the camp. But Moses replied, no, it's not a shout of victory nor the wailing of defeat. I hear the sound of a celebration. When they came near the camp, Moses saw the calf and the dancing, and he burned with anger. He threw the stone tablets to the ground, smashing them on the foot of the mountain. He took the calf they had made and burned it. Then he ground it into powder, threw it into the water, and forced the people to drink it. So kind of radical, forcing them to drink it. But back to my point, we think, how could they do something like this? They literally saw with their own eyes the miracles of God in front of them. But let me pose a question to you. How many times have you seen God work in your life? You know, how many times have you seen God personally? How many times have you felt that move in your spirit? How many times have you felt that conviction, but you chose to ignore it? And you chose to go back to your ways. And you chose to devalue or diminish the value of God. And so the problem we have as Christians is often just like the Israelites. You know, as soon as we have uncertainty, as soon as we have any kind of difficulty in our life, like the Israelites were having, we completely falter, we waver, we bend, we break. Our faith is broken and shattered. All because we don't have that value for God that we should have. You know, and we begin to make excuses for why we do the things we do. And Aaron did the same thing. If we look at what Aaron says to Moses when Moses comes down, and Moses asks Aaron, why did you do it? You know, why even a calf? Why did you make the calf? And just listen to how ridiculous this is. So verse 21, it says, finally he turned to Aaron and demanded, what did these people do to you to make you bring such terrible sin upon them? Don't get so upset, my lord, Aaron replied. You yourself know how evil these people are. They said to me, make us gods who will lead us. We don't know what happened to this fellow Moses. He brought us here from the land of Egypt. So I told them, whoever has gold jewelry, take it off. When they brought it to me, I simply threw it into the fire. And he says, out came this calf. I mean, can you imagine asking for answers, asking for something, and you get the excuse it happened on its own? Imagine you had a child or a kid and you see this huge mess, or you have an animal and you see this huge mess. There's broken glass everywhere in your house. Everything is torn up, and all you see is your kid there, or your animal there, clearly distraught because they themselves are the ones who did it. And they say it happened by itself. I don't know how it happened, but it just came up by itself. And you clearly know what the truth is, but they still play this foolish excuse, I guess. But the thing is, we do the exact same thing all the time. The exact same thing. You know, how often do you choose other things over God's promises? How often do you choose other things over the things that God has told you to do, that God has given you the conviction for? And really, I think there's two main kinds of people that diminish the value of God. Two main kinds of people. And the first kind of person is the one that has no roots in their faith. And this is the first kind of person I want to talk about. And so I'm sure you've heard the parable of the sower. How many of you guys have heard the parable of the sower? Just show of hands. Okay, so half of you have not heard the parable of the sower. I'm sure most of you have. So the parable of the sower, with this one specifically, the one with no roots, as soon as the sun picks up, it quickly withers and dies because it has no grounding, it has no foundation, its roots are not deep into anything. And usually for people like this, they can't find their roots in anything. They can't find their roots in God. They can't find their roots in their relationships. They can't find their roots in their work and their jobs. They're always chasing something better, something greater, but it grieves God when you can't trust him with your weakness. It grieves God when you can't trust him with your trials. It grieves God when you can't trust him with your addictions because you don't think he can handle it, because you don't give him the value that he deserves. I don't know how often I can say that, how much I can say that. You know, and half the time we're struggling with these difficulties and these issues. I know for me, myself, 90% of the time I make it up in my head. Imagine you have an argument with your friend and they say something mean to you, and throughout the entire day, you're repeating it and playing it back in your head. You're repeating it and playing it back in your head, and it gets worse and worse and worse every time you hear it. And then you're convincing yourself everyone hates you, and then you're convincing yourself that you're not friends, and then you're convincing yourself that you're not good enough for a relationship. I do it all the time. And it gets worse and worse. But in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 10, it says, "In his kindness, God called you to share in his eternal glory by means of Jesus Christ. So after you have suffered a little while, he will restore, support, and strengthen you. He will place you on a firm foundation." I really want to emphasize, after you have suffered a little while, after you've gone through your trial, after you've gone through your tribulation, is when you're ready for God to do his work on you. You know, imagine you buy a house and this house is terrible. It reeks. The floors are just broken and warping, and they're falling apart. The walls, they're gross. They are filled with the stench. And you have to tear down the walls to build something new. Only after tearing out the floor can you put something new. But the issue is when we're tearing out our floors and when we're tearing out our walls and we're working on our inner home, we're not trusting God in the process. Because what good is it if you've torn down the wall of sin? What good is it if you've torn down the floors of addiction, if you leave it on your front porch and reinstall it every other week? What good is it? The only good comes is when you really trust Jesus with the process for him to tear down the walls, pull out the floors, haul it away and get it out of your life. Never look back at that garbage and rubbish that you were looking at before. The only way to get rid of the stench of sin from your carpets, the only way to get rid of the terribleness and the hideousness of the walls and floors in your house is for God to replace it with something new and something better. I'm not talking about leaving this house hollow, leaving this house empty. The only way to replace this with something new and something better is actually spending your time in something that God wants for you. Spending your time in a ministry, spending your time in your secret place with God, spending your time in the Word, genuinely wanting to know more about him. Because I know, even in my life personally, back when I lived in Washington, sure, I went to church on a Sunday. Sure, I went to the occasional youth service. But because I was never plugged in, because I never had a community, I never had a relationship. Because I was never plugged in and I never had a community, I didn't have that relationship, that life with Christ that I always wanted. So even though it's hard work, it needs to be done. So if you want to feel like you're in a new home, you have to call out to him. Now, the second kind of person who strips God of his value, and this is one I really want to emphasize on because I feel like this used to be me, and this is a lot of us. The second kind of person who strips God of his value is the one who treats his relationship like it's transactional. You know, usually these kinds of people, and I used to be the same way, I thought I was doing the extra work. I thought I was putting in those steps. I thought I was letting him put up the walls in my life, and I thought I was letting him replace my floors. Because I was making it to the conference, I was reaching for that special guest speaker. I was making it to the service. I was making it there. I felt God. I felt his presence in the place. I felt him. But that's all my relationship was. It felt like a genie in a bottle. Every time I felt like I was going through something difficult and I didn't feel the presence of God in my life, my faith withered, my faith fell, my faith broke, it warped, it sagged, it didn't look good anymore. My house was torn, distraught. And so even though you make it to these conferences and these speakers, Jesus didn't bleed on the cross for you to feel tingles. Jesus didn't die for you to fall on your knees at the altar. Jesus paid a price for your salvation and your relationship. At the end of the day, even if you feel tingles on a conference, even if you feel something at the altar and you feel like the speaker is calling down God from heaven, that's not how this works. The speaker isn't the one who encounters God and brings him to you. You are. And I've seen so many people fall into this trap where, oh, I don't feel the presence of God here. This church is dead. You're the one who has the relationship, not the speaker. The speaker isn't the one bridging the gap. It's Jesus. And that's your relationship with him to take care of. You know, I used to wonder, why is the altar packed some services and empty on others? But I feel like as Christians, especially in this church, we're drawn to emotion. We're drawn to it. We want to feel it. We want to feel the fire of God in our hearts and in our lives. We want to feel that feeling in ourselves. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, I'm going to give you a quick little story. How many of you guys have actually watched the show The Office? So I know it's kind of out of place in this sermon, or it feels like right now, but The Office is basically a mockumentary about a paper company. And there's two people I want to bring up. There's someone named Dwight, who's kind of a little weird, and then there's someone named Michael, who's also kind of a little weird, but in a different way. He's a little quirky. Now, Dwight wins #1 salesman of the year, and he's extremely nervous to speak at a conference. But he starts studying dictators and stuff like that because someone else is pranking him or something like that. I'm not going to get into it. But he starts studying like how to draw a crowd. But he's nervous. He's beating sweat. He's shaking in his boots. He's shaking. And so Michael sees it and he runs up to the stage and pretends to be him for a couple minutes. Now, he's talking pretty mellow. He's saying some pretty corny jokes. And obviously no one's buying it. No one's laughing. And after about 5 to 10 minutes, Dwight runs up to the stage. And so from a crowd who isn't motivated, isn't moving at all, Dwight bangs his fist on the pulpit and he shouts, "Blood alone is what moves the cogs of history." And everyone instantly wakes up and opens up their eyes. And he's shouting for 30 minutes straight and he gets a standing ovation. But everything he said didn't make sense at all. Not a single word made sense. He was talking about history and they're at a paper company, right? But sometimes this is how our services feel like. Sometimes this is how these conferences feel like. It feels like maybe they're saying the right things, but what's really drawing you there? What's really bringing you to the altar? Is it your relationship with Christ, or is it because someone yelled on stage? Is it because your friend ran up? Is it because everyone else is watching? What's really calling you up front? What's really calling you to the altar? What's really calling you to have a relationship with God? Can I have someone on the keys, please? You know, sometimes we get so caught up with a charismatic speaker and how loud the drums are and how the lights look and how the sound system is, and we want to feel it in our hearts and we want to see it moving in the crowd. Sometimes we forget about our own relationship with God, and we get so stuck in this legalistic approach that you have to have this feeling. And if you're not having this feeling, God isn't moving, God isn't working in your life. But I want to ask you, what is your value for God? What is God's value for you, and what is your value for Him? What's the difference? You know, we don't serve a God who doesn't know our names. We don't serve a God who left a tomb full. We serve a God who got up and stood and walked and defeated death and defeated the grave for you and I the same. God's value for us was a price that comes priceless. We don't serve a statue. We don't serve something empty or meaningless. We serve someone who genuinely thought about you on that cross without a single doubt in his mind, without a single bit of uncertainty that what he was doing was for you and for I. And he knew and he knows your name, and he calls you out by name, and he values that relationship. And if you feel like God is missing in your life right now, if you feel like God was missing in the middle of your difficulties, if you feel like God was missing in the middle of your largest and hardest trial, I really, really encourage you to take a second look. I really, really want you to genuinely get on your knees and pray to Him and genuinely think about where He is right now, because He's there, and I promise you that. You know, if you feel like you're not good enough for that, if you feel like that you're not there yet to deserve that salvation at hand, if you feel like you're not good enough to receive the calling that's there for you, I want to remind you of the story we just read. Moses felt like that too. Moses felt like he wasn't good enough. Moses felt like he wasn't there. Moses was so underqualified, and God still put him in the position to rescue His people. And God can put you in that same position too. And I believe He's calling every single one of us to that position as well. If you're not ministering to your friends, if you're not ministering to your family, if you're not ministering to your coworkers, where is your value lie? Where is your relationship? Because God puts that same value in you that you should have for Him. So if you feel like you're not good enough, put on that robe of righteousness that Jesus clothes you with. Take off your robe of self-righteousness. Take off your filthy rags and put on the robe that He gives you. Clothe yourself with the blood of Christ, because that alone is your salvation. That alone is where your relationships should lie. You know, sometimes we feel like we can't close that gap. Sometimes we feel like, I get it, I understand. Sometimes I feel like I need the speaker to bridge it, but Jesus closed the gap already. Jesus has put out the bridge for you. All you need to do is walk across it. I know sometimes it's hard. I know sometimes the straight and narrow gets difficult, especially when you got sin calling your name from every direction. But if you just give your hands to God and you just give your life to Jesus and take off the chains and the weight of your sin, everything will feel a lot better. Everything will feel much better. The freedom that comes with Jesus beats any slavery or bondage that comes with your sin. The Israelites wanted to go back to their slavery, but unlike you need to go to the freedom that they should have had, that they should have valued. Because you need to value the relationship that God gives to you, because God values yours. Like I was saying before, the price that paid for your life didn't come cheap. Your freedom doesn't come cheap. There was a price that was paid, and if we could all rise. not going to make all of you guys come to the front. I'm not going to make you raise your hand. I'm not going to make you scream out praying and crying right now and try to motivate you to come to the front and feel embarrassed if you don't. Because I believe earnestly that God can move you where you are. I believe whether or not you're jumping, whether or not you're shouting, whether or not you're crying, that God can move you where you are. God moves you even if you're silent. If you're praying and you whisper, God can move in you, and your relationship matters to Him, and you should value His the same. So let's all pray. Father God, I pray that you would just encounter this entire place today, oh Father. Lord, I pray that you would just fill us with your Spirit, oh God. Lord, I pray that your presence would rest on this place, oh Lord. Lord, I pray that you would just soften the hearts of everyone here, oh God. Lord, I pray that you would remove the scales from their eyes, oh Lord. Lord, if they're feeling like they're going through that difficulty, they're feeling like they're going through that trial, that you would expose yourself to them, oh Father, and you would show yourself to them, oh my God, that you would show that you're standing right there next to them, Father. Lord, I pray that they wouldn't have to feel like they're going through this alone, oh Lord, but instead you'd be standing there right next to them, oh God, and they would feel your hand guiding them, oh Lord. I pray that you would just encounter every single person here, oh Father. I thank you, oh Jesus, for the price that was paid for our salvation, oh God, for the holy blood that dripped from that cross, oh God. Lord, for the covenant that was broken, oh God, and the covenant that was made new, oh Father, the veil that was torn, Lord. I thank you for that, oh Jesus. I thank you for your grace and your mercy, oh Lord, even though we aren't worthy of it, and even though we constantly look away from you, oh God, and act like the Israelites did, and treat your freedom like it's meaningless, and go back and run back to our slavery, and run back to our chains, oh Lord. I thank you, oh Jesus. I thank you, oh God, for all that you've done for us, oh Lord. I pray that you would just fill us with your Spirit, oh God. I thank you, oh Jesus. I thank you for your move. I thank you for your work, oh God. I thank you, oh Jesus. In Jesus' almighty name, amen.